What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another edition of Backyard Play with Q. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones. It is that time. We branch out a little bit with the NFL right around the corner, baseball postseason right around the corner as well. We got to talk a little college football with our guy, our college sports aficionado, Nick Kosko from On3 Sports, and of course, the voice of RU Wrestling, Cal Athletics, Cal Live Sports Athletics in our backyard down the shore as well. At Nick Kosko 59, he's got it looks to be the Rutgers Red. They open against Northwestern. I guess some optimism, caution. We'll get into your Scarlet Knights in a couple moments, but good to have you back on this season, my friend. How's everything?
Appreciate you, Rich. Good as always. This is not necessarily a Rutgers red. It's a Mickey Mouse red and a Nike polo. So that's probably the type of football that we're going to see when it's Rutgers Northwestern next weekend. Little
Look
Mickey
at
Mouse
this.
football. No, I'm just. But
Wow.
you mentioned baseball playoffs. I know
Yeah.
we're talking college football, but I got the Boston Red Sox thing over my right shoulder right now. So in the wild card race, not too bad. But blew that game to the Dodgers last night. I gotta say.
But did I not tell you the Yankees were going to miss the postseason? I called it prior to the
You
season.
did.
So
You did. I just didn't think it'd be this bad. And, when you get swept by the Red Sox in this kind of year with a fourth and fifth place team, it's not as satisfying as a Red Sox fan.
just need all this, right? It'll be a short segment. Just needle. All right. So as we are on the air right now, Navy's getting waxed by Notre Dame. Not a competitive game. You got USC number 6 tonight against San Jose State. We both believe that's not going to be competitive. But next weekend, Michigan, Tennessee, TCU, Ohio State, Georgia. We'll see the gambit of those stacked teams. And I want to kind of get your thoughts first with the self-imposed, I guess you will, suspension for Harbaugh. And they're going to kind of shuffle and rotate a couple of different coaches over the first couple of weeks. I mean, is Michigan just good enough still to kind of get away with not having Harbaugh on the sidelines? Can they win games in his absence?
Yeah, no doubt. I'm looking at what this team is going into 2023, and it's actually kind of funny. You mentioned coaches being shuffled all around. Jack Harbaugh is actually back on the sidelines.
That's right.
As an assistant coach, and I couldn't believe that. I think I was off from my shifts over at On3, and I kind of just missed that over the past couple of days, leading into high school football down here in South Jersey. I'm like, wow, Jack Harbaugh's back coaching.
Throw him in there.
Just Jim's like, hey, hey, Dad, can you come on the sideline, just help me out just for a couple of games or something like that? But the biggest thing for me for Michigan is, if we're talking about the 3 games that they're not going to have him on the sideline, they're still going to have him in the days leading up to their game on Saturday. They're going to have him through the whole game week. He'll implement everything, but other guys will be calling the plays, making sure everything's going right. Sherrone Moore, I know the offensive coordinator, he's going to miss the first game as well because he was part of the suspensions, the self-imposed suspensions. But I'm not worried about it. If I'm Michigan, you want to avoid having these glaring mistakes when everyone's watching you when Harbaugh's not on the sideline. But I mean, they're going to wax East Carolina in the first game of the year. I mean, this is not a Appalachian State type of situation in my mind from back in 07 or whatever the year that was when that monumental upset happened. But, it's interesting because Harbaugh actually does come back, not to shoehorn Rutgers into this, but of course he comes back. Game number 4 is the Big Ten opener against the Scarlet Knights. But to me, the way Michigan looks, what they have on offense, J.J. McCarthy's back at quarterback. I mean, this is a guy that might be potentially a late first-round pick going into the 2024 draft, and I don't feel like enough people are talking about the strides that he could potentially make as a quarterback this year under Harbaugh. And of course, you got the dynamic backfield back once again. Blake Corum decided to come back to school. Donovan Edwards is still there as well. So you arguably have the best running back duo in the country as well. And Roman Wilson stepping up as the top wide receiver. That offense is going to be loaded. The defense, same thing. It's going to be another tough defense. I would say Michigan is the favorite in the Big Ten. So when you look at Harbaugh missing 3 games, and there's been argument that, well, he'll miss 3 games. It might throw off their mojo a little bit late in the season. It won't affect them, because then when he comes back, they're going to get Rutgers in their Big Ten opener. And again, I'm not, even as a Rutgers alum and fan, I'm not expecting them to do that much against the Wolverines when it comes to week 4. So I think Michigan will be just fine.
We know the powerhouses, right? The Georgias, the Michigans, the Alabamas, the Ohio States. The list goes on and on. Then you've got the teams to watch: FSU, Washington. I know we always highlight and illustrate the big boys, but I think there's a couple sleeper teams out here. I want to get your thoughts on maybe 2 or 3 of them. I want to throw a couple first at you. You tell me, you gauge it. the barometer, so to speak. Let me throw a couple of these teams and tell me what you're thinking. I'll give you my reasoning behind them, especially when we're thinking about this from a betting standpoint. Win totals. You look at Kentucky, 6.5. This is a team, they won a couple bowl games. Have they not? They got the kid from North Carolina State to transfer. You look at his numbers, Lear, I think 60% completion percentage, 62 to 18 touchdown to picks.
Right.
They got the edge rusher. They got the corner. They got some playmakers. So can Kentucky surprise this season in your eyes?
Yeah, I'd say so. They're pretty much going from Will Levis. Now, regardless of what you thought of Will Levis, a quarterback for Kentucky over the past couple of years, and I wasn't a huge fan of his based on the hype he was getting going into the draft. And regardless of how his NFL career with the Titans or whoever else at this point
Right.
turns out as a pro, Devin Leary, I would say on paper, is the better quarterback at the college level than Levis was. Devin Leary, of course, shout out South Jersey boy, Timber Creek High School back in the day down here in our local area. But again, he put up big numbers at NC State. This is a tailor-made offense for him in terms of what he did at NC State, what he can do at Kentucky. I think it definitely puts him over. And I believe you said 6.5 as their win total. I'm actually a little surprised that it's that low. And again, they play in what is now perceived as an improved SEC East. Of course, we know Georgia going for their third straight national championship. Tennessee is really good again this year. South Carolina is on the rise. Kentucky, very solid. I'd even mention Missouri and Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, huge rebuilding project, but obviously they're moving on up a little bit under Clark Lee. And then you look at, as mentioned, Missouri, still kind of there in that 5 to 7 range in terms of total wins. But I think Kentucky, I would hit the over on that, certainly from a betting perspective. I think Leary is the biggest difference maker. Are they going to win the SEC East? No. Are they going to beat Tennessee? Probably not. Are they going to beat Georgia? I don't think so. But I would say Kentucky, you're looking at maybe around an 8-win team, maybe a 9-win team if you add in a bowl game win. But I would say hit the over on that for the Wildcats.
Yeah, because it got juiced now to 7. And you're right, it's always tough with that 6.5, 7. Typically, you'll see a game they have no business winning, and then sometimes you win a game. I look at, here's a team that when you think about it, they missed out on the AP and the coach's preseason top 25 rankings. They're still probably 30, 33, 34. I mean, again,
they're not too far off. A couple wins and they'll get right in that top 20.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably say very small percent to win the conference, but a pretty good percent to go back and win a bowl game. I mean, they won 3 out of the last 4.
Yeah, I cannot see them missing the postseason this year, especially with a guy like that. Barring injury to Devin Leary, that offense is going to be just fine, if not better than what it was in the last 2 years with Levis at under center. So then again, it's nothing against Will Levis. I was just never as high on him as others were, but I personally like Devin Leary for what he did at NC State. Now, as long as he stays healthy, he's in the same boat. He's got to stay healthy as well, as he had a couple injuries at NC State. If he stays healthy, I would say Kentucky is on their way to probably around that 7 to 9 win range.
Little college football talk on this edition of Back Your Play with Q. Rich Quinones here on 3 Sports. Is Nick Kosko kind enough to join us from our good friends over at Play It Again Sports and Scoots Liquors. All right, BYU, now they jumped to the Big 12, 8-5 a year ago. Again, they also lost some players. They lost to Kit Hall. But again, I think you tell me an upgrade with the other transfer they got over from Pitt, Slovis, right? You've got a high octane offense. We've seen it in years past with teams like BYU. I was surprised their win total was as low as it sits at 5.5, which is probably now 6. So again, I think this is a team that is capable of putting up 30, 35 points. Can they win shootouts is the question in the Big 12.
And it's funny you mentioned shootouts, because the Big 12 was always used to be known for the shootouts in the 55 to 50 games. And then it kind of went the other way a couple of years ago when Dave Aranda won the Big 12 with Baylor in only his second season over there. So, has it shifted back towards the offense? Maybe, because there's a lot of highlights on offense in this conference. You look at Texas, which is probably the favorite in the Big 12 this year. Oklahoma has a really good quarterback in Dylan Gabriel, even though they have a defensive head coach in Brent Venables. BYU, shootout type of team joining the Big 12 this year. Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF are the other new Big 12 members this year as well. So, I mean, I'm looking at BYU's schedule. I mean, you would think, I don't want to call them cupcakes. It's a little bit of a disrespect to those schools. But Sam Houston in Southern Utah, you'll start out 2-0. Then you get the challenge in Arkansas on the road. Now, if BYU goes on the road against Arkansas, now Arkansas, again, they in a similar situation to what a Kentucky is in the SEC East. This is what Arkansas is in the SEC West, because you have the Alabamas, you have the LSUs, you obviously have Texas A&M, Ole Miss, and you have the two Mississippi schools, Ole Miss and Mississippi State. Arkansas is a really good quarterback. They have a stifling defense. They play big up in the trenches. If BYU can go on the road to Arkansas, actually win that game, I would love to take the Cougars more seriously this year. Now, you mentioned that win total, which is probably sitting at 5.5, 6. That's probably about right for BYU for what they are going to be this year, considering the Big 12 schedule that they're going to have to play this year. Now, again, it starts out with Kansas on the road, their Big 12 schedule at least, which is right after the Arkansas game. Then they go back home and they play Cincinnati. They're on the road against TCU. So the Big 12 schedule, a little bit up and down, I'd say. You don't know what Cincinnati is going to be in total this year. And obviously Kansas, I think people are overlooking Kansas as well. So if I'm adding it all together with BYU, and you mentioned Keaton Slovis as well, good transfer quarterback from Pitt. He obviously had his moments at USC and Pitt, never really got the full reign of an offense on either one. But I mean, you go back to his USC days, you're like, wow, if we had that Keaton Slovis, maybe BYU is going to be pretty good. But I would say that win total is probably about right. I'd lean towards 6 for BYU, but I don't think that the Cougars are going to do anything miraculous or remarkable or special in the Big 12, at least this year.
Yeah, so if you look at some of their futures with some of these lines going forward, you probably want to hammer some of these games with the over, right? They ran for about $1.76. They passed for about 250, kind of middle of the pack. What worries me a little bit is that playing from behind, and the reason I say that is I always look at third down efficiency on the defensive side of the ball. They weren't the best in the country last year. And to me, you're going to give up big plays. I mean, you got to get these guys off the field on third down. You have to be able to force punts or get to the quarterback. So that troubles me, but I can see 6, especially as you alluded to, if they can stockpile a couple early wins in the season.
Yeah, because you have the 2 games that they're most likely going to win to start out the season. The Arkansas game is obviously the big non-conference game, and it's on the road. Tough to go into the SEC in a situation like that. The Big 12, while it's deep, it's weird because I could say it's deep, but it's still top heavy. You know what I mean? Because you have the TCUs, you have Texas and Oklahoma. Texas Tech might be pretty good this year, but it's kind of topsy-turvy. It's roller coastery. It's going to be a weird conference this year unless Texas just runs away with it, like a lot of people are expecting to do, to go 12-0 and win the conference, or go 11-1 and win the conference and be 12-1 and compete for a playoff spot. But I would say, you mentioned the defense as well. If BYU's defense comes to play at this point, then maybe you do see them maybe win that 7th game, maybe upset somebody and get that 8th win as well. But defense is going to be the key. That's why you look at the top guys or the top teams like a Texas and Oklahoma, and eventually maybe like a TCU again.
Lay in 20 against Sam Houston. 50.5 juice to the over for the total, but on the road against Arkansas, as you illustrated, at Kansas, at TCU, at Texas, at West Virginia. So, and then they close, I think, against Oklahoma State. The third team, all the buzz, right? All the buzz with Deion and prime time, and here we go, Colorado. How about Colorado State, right? You think of the head coach, that air raid type of offense. They got a solid defense. I'm kind of looking at Colorado State. I know Colorado is getting all the press clippings and the noise, and rightfully so, all the love and the flowers. But how about Colorado State? I mean, can they be a team that surprises this season?
Possibly. I mean, I'm looking at their schedule as well, and you mentioned the Deion Sanders factor. The Colorado State-Colorado game might be pretty big for that Colorado State program when it comes to September 16th. But, they start out with Washington State on September 2nd, and I'm looking down the schedule, Middle Tennessee. You would think that I can almost see, Rich, 3-1 to start out the season. You look at Washington State. I know Washington State's coming to you. They're not the best program right now in the Pac-12, or whatever we're going to call it now for next year, the Pac-4, maybe Pac-2. Colorado. Now I can't rule out them winning against Colorado. I mean, you heard me, I would say, this was earlier this winter about Colorado and Deion Sanders. I'm much higher on Colorado than a lot of people. I do think they're going to get closer to that 6-win mark than be closer to a 0. So basically closer to 6 than closer to 0. But that Colorado State game, it's a rivalry game, in-state rivalry. I would think that Colorado, at least the people that are talking about Colorado, the Buffaloes at least, they're thinking about how they're going to do in the Pac-12, how they're going to do against Nebraska and TCU, and they're moving back to the Big 12 next year. Don't overlook that Colorado State game. I know it's in Boulder, but if Colorado State finds their way to make that a very ugly type of game, they might shut down the flash of Deion Sanders' crew at this point. And then you're looking at, they have Middle Tennessee State, Colorado State does the next week on the road. Then they host Utah Tech, and then they're going on the road to Utah State. I can't rule out a 3-1 start to this season for Colorado State.
It helps you depending upon where you hang your hat, because it's 4.5 now. Over is -150. Am I laying that to, again, I got to lay that
for Colorado State? Not necessarily, no.
Yeah,
but it's an intriguing number.
It is, but again, what worries me a little bit, and I'm talking from a pure betting standpoint, hitting it. They finished 3-9 last year. They couldn't score a lick. I think they averaged about 13. They gave up like 25, 26. So there's going to be some games where they're probably going to have to play from behind. But I would take a flyer on them if, as you mentioned, if you start 3-1, all you have to do is figure out a way to get me to 2 more wins, and I'm cashing the ticket.
Yeah, that's essentially. Yeah. And again, you cannot rule out that 3-1 start. Now, Middle Tennessee State, for what it's worth, and I know it's on the road, but again, these early games, especially when they get to their Mountain West schedule later in the year as well, it can get really weird. And we know Utah Tech just chalked that up to a win. It's not, again, nothing against Utah Tech, but chalk that up as a win. And then again, you never know with that rivalry game. Rivalry games are very weird. Don't forget, is for all the hype that I like to give Colorado and Deion Sanders, especially them being at home for this game. Don't forget, this team won 1 game last year, and Deion did turn over the entire roster, almost 80 new players into the system. So it's like, this team is either going to be 5 to 6 wins to me, or it's going to be a 2 to 3 win season where they're competitive in a lot of games, but you also see there's still a lot of work to do. So don't rule that out. Watch out for that Colorado State-Colorado game.
But again, think about this. How much, if you're looking at, say, you mentioned Colorado right now, so their regular season over under is 3.5. Okay.
Oh, that's a brutal number right now.
It's 3.5. So based on what you're saying, if we're saying the Deion effect is good for 2 wins, I'm hammering. Confidence level is high. I'm hammering the over with the Duke, right?
I like it. Again, if it's at, you said it was at 3.5, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would, this is me. The Deion effect to me I would slam the over. If it's 3.5, all you got to get me is a 4th win.
Well, but that's easier said than done. We're saying how much.
I know it's easier said than done.
Yeah,
I know it's easier said than done. But I'm confident that Deion can get this Colorado team to 4 wins. And I'm not just saying that because he's brought over a handful of guys from Jackson State. And don't knock Jackson State. That was a great football team in the last 2 years under him. His son's the quarterback, Shedeur Sanders. I think he's overlooked as well. I know the Colorado faithful are thinking that he's going to be a Heisman contender. I'm not going to go that far, but I think Shedeur Sanders is very good. Don't make no mistake about it. Look at Travis Hunter. He's going to play both ways this year. He was the #1 recruit, according to some services, or at least, one of the top recruits. If you combine all the services, On3, 24/7 rivals. He committed to Deion at Jackson State over Florida State. Let's not forget that. And he followed him to Colorado for this purpose. He's going to play both ways. He's mostly probably going to be used as a DB, but he's a weapon on offense. He showed it at Jackson State last year. And again, their schedule. Now, do I think they're going to beat TCU on the road in the opening game? I do not. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say bold prediction they're going to beat TCU. But Nebraska at home, I know it feels like Nebraska should be favored, but don't forget, that's a big rebuilding job for Matt Rule. And I don't care what Matt Rule has done in the past with Temple and Baylor, resurrecting those programs when he was there. This guy was in the NFL for the past couple of years, had a failed stint with the Carolina Panthers. He has come back to college, and he has I would say, not as bare of a cupboard as Deion did at Colorado, but it's still a bare cupboard for what Scott Frost basically could not build at Nebraska over the last 4 or 5 years. So that's a winnable game. And there, again, we mentioned on the flip side of the Colorado State game, and that's a winnable game right there. So if I'm chalking it up, Rich, that's 2 wins right there. And then you have to start finding where do those other 2 wins come from if we're hammering the over to get that 4th win. Oregon, USC, probably not happening. Arizona State on the road, I'm going to lean towards no. But then Stanford at home. Stanford, obviously, they have to rebuild as well at UCLA and hosting Oregon State, tough games. Arizona, iffy there.
A lot of iffies.
Yeah, I know they're iffies. Washington State, to me, maybe a winnable game on the road, and then they're at the road on the road against Utah. So I think there are still 2 or 3 wins in there. I mean, but I don't know. 3 wins a little hopeful, but I think there are 2 more wins after you look at Nebraska and Colorado State.
I don't know. This guy's been cashing Rutgers checks for a while now. I don't know. We got Colorado. Is it signed over to you? What's going on over there?
I need a spoiler alert. I'm probably going to be getting a Coach Prime, what do we call it, a hoodie in the mail maybe by the time we roll around to November. I'm gonna have to get myself one. I gotta get some brand new Deion shades and a Coach Prime hoodie, maybe a week coming shirt. I need one of those.
There you go. All right, we talked about Colorado. Give me two or so teams that you think I gave you my sleepers. Give me 2 or 3 that you think can surprise this season. When I say surprise, not only hit the win total, be in contention, maybe for college football playoff series or win a bowl game. A team that we didn't think was heading into the season, we really didn't put too much stock into them.
A couple that come off the top of my head. I know I just mentioned them, UCLA. I think a lot of the conversation center around the Pac-12 right now, or, obviously the death of the Pac-12 is not only realignment, all these teams going to the Big Ten, the others going to the Big 12, but all the talk around the conference right now, at least this year, in the present day, is all about, can USC get over the hump with the conference title and get to the college football playoff? And, maybe Lincoln Riley, can he win a national title in year 2? All talks about USC. Oregon is obviously very good. What they did under Dan Lanning in his first year. Last year, they're going to be in top contention for the conference, and everyone loves Washington this year. Michael Penix Jr. is back at quarterback. He's going to be I would say maybe like a 2nd or 3rd round pick at this point. The way he played last year, resurrected his college career with the Huskies, and Kalen DeBoer has obviously unlocked his full potential with the Huskies. So, and then you can't forget about Utah. Obviously, they've won the Pac-12 2 years in a row, and their season basically depends on the health of quarterback Cam Rising as well. So everyone's talking about those teams, and guess what? All those teams are not going to be in the conference next year. Now there's UCLA. Now there's UCLA, of course, but I like UCLA this year. I do think Dante Moore, the true freshman quarterback, is a 5-star. I think he eventually will. If he doesn't start week 1, he will eventually start this year at quarterback, because he's exactly the type of quarterback that Chip Kelly needs, a la, remember when Chip Kelly had his guy in Marcus Mariota at Oregon? I think Dante Moore is his guy for this current day UCLA offense. Maybe he doesn't click on a Heisman scale right away as a true freshman, but I think he's ultimately going to be the best option for that offense moving forward at some point. I would watch out for UCLA. They could probably pick some people off in the Pac-12. So that's at least one of my teams that I need to watch out for again.
Plus 1,400. They've got the 6th shortest odds, but you mentioned that Pac-12, which is stacked. I mean, the win total is USC, 10. Washington, there's the hook again, 9.5. Oregon 9.5, UCLA 8.5, Utah sitting there at 8.5, and then you kind of go to the bottom of the barrel that we talked a little bit. Your Stanford, your Colorado, your Arizona State, California sitting at 5, Oregon at plus 300, Washington at plus 375. Listen, they haven't won. I think what was it? Their last conference championship was 98. UCLA,
something like that. Yeah.
I mean,
I would take a fly. I mean, that 8.5 win total. I mean, I don't know about winning the conference, Rich, because again, the teams that I mentioned above, you're probably more likely to hit their win total and then, them missing out on the Pac-12 title game. Yeah. But I would say 8.5, that's not bad. I could see this. I mean, this team was 8-4 last year and then didn't play the bowl game, or maybe I get my years crossed, my wires crossed. Maybe that was 2 years ago, but still, this team, if I remember correctly, won 8 games last year. 9 wins to me is not out of the question, because again, Utah is dependent upon Cam Rising's health. Washington is very hyped right now. Oregon also hyped. They have a great quarterback in Bo Nix. The quarterback play, by the way, in the Pac-12 is phenomenal right now. Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr., just to name a couple guys. DJ Uyunglele, the former Clemson quarterback, if he can put it together at Oregon State, he's another one to watch out for. But I would say UCLA, those are that is one of my sleepers, I would say, to maybe watch out for 9 wins this year in the regular season.
Is it a pretty much a foregone conclusion who's going to win the Heisman?
I think everyone loves Caleb Williams. It's very hard for me right now to pick against him, and it would obviously be historic. He'd only be the second guy to ever win 2 Heisman trophies after Archie Griffin did it for Ohio State back in the 70s.
Yep.
I'm right off the top of my head, Rich, I'm really trying to think of who would actually contend for the Heisman. I gotta say, if I'm going to pick a Heisman contender that maybe could throw it off, I really want to pick one of those Michigan boys and Blake Corum or Donovan Edwards, but they're going to be splitting carries. And again, they were both phenomenal last year. I think one of them could break out and have Heisman caliber numbers. I mean, I think Corum was there last year before the injury. Then Edwards is like, well, maybe Edwards is actually better. So I would love to pick one of those guys. I think JJ McCarthy could be a guy
Plus
if they let him.
1,500.
If they really let him open up the passing game this year, which you saw more down the stretch last year, when they said, well, he's got to be able to do it against Ohio State. He's got to be able to do it in the playoff.
Yeah.
And other than, obviously he didn't play a perfect game against TCU in the playoff last year, but that dude let it sling. He let it fly last year. So maybe he's an outside the box candidate. Cade Klubnik, I know if he was like the second coming in terms of quarterbacks over at Clemson under Dabo Swinney, but he was up and down in his short time last year, subbing in as a true freshman. So I don't know. Jordan Travis to me is the other guy. I would say I almost forgot about him. Jordan Travis over at Florida State. Yep. I would say he's probably the most likely guy to upset the apple cart, so to speak, when it comes to Caleb Williams going for a second Heisman. So if I had to pick, out of all those guys, I would love to pick a Michigan guy because I love. I don't know. I like seeing Michigan in that big spot, but I would say I would have to probably roll with Jordan Travis in terms of if I'm going to pick a Heisman guy that's not named Caleb Williams, I would probably go Jordan Travis.
Yeah. I feel like just putting something down on Bo Nix only because of draft day. And then we find out no one was invited to his party when he turned 21. And, we have to know what's going on there, right?
Yeah, I know. I would not rule it because Bo Nix had what we would call a revival, a resurrection, so to speak, when a new face or new face, or what was it called? Old face, new place, or something like that. He goes from Auburn. He was great as a freshman, sophomore slump. Then in the third year, you're like, and then goes to Oregon. Lights it up last year. I mean, that's not a bad pick either.
All the players we talked about plus 15 to plus 1,600. All right. Before I let you get out of here, Rutgers opens up against was it Northwestern, I believe.
And so Sunday, a CBS special on Sunday from Piscataway.
Shameless plug. There you go. So optimism is probably because of your OC, who again will open it up, and then you got a very good line coach in Flattery that won a couple Super Bowls with the Giants. So I think there's cause for optimism in that regard. My problem is offensively, I don't think Rutgers has a ton of depth, especially to skill positions, i.e. the wide receiver spot.
Wide receivers, their weakest spot. And again, just based on my, I've turned into more of back into a fan of this program at this point because of my, my national coverage over at On3 and just having to pay attention to markets that are going to do big numbers for us, and the teams that are actually in bowl contention every year. But I mean, the optimism surrounding Rutgers right now is Kirk Shiraka. He's back at the school. He's had success at Minnesota, Penn State, other schools around the Big Ten, and Greg Schiano trusted him when he was here initially during Schiano's first stint. So bringing him back, I think it's the stability they finally need. Because again, I think other than Sean Gleason, who was there for, we can call it a cup of coffee because it was, but he was there for more than 1 year, which is like an eternity at Rutgers at this point over the last decade plus in terms of their OCs. They have the quarterback. Can Kirk Shiraka unlock that four-star potential? Mm-hmm. Gavin Wimsatt has been here now for a couple of years. He didn't have a senior year of high school because he enrolled early on an NIL deal at Rutgers. He's a four-star out of the state of Kentucky. We've seen flashes of that insane arm talent that he was recruited on. He's the prototypical size, and he's added on size as he's coming to college. When he was the starter down the stretch last year, did not look great. Then again, did Rutgers look great at all last year down the stretch? No. The Northwestern game, that's almost a game, Rich, where I feel like if you're Rutgers, you have to win that game. Northwestern is a dumpster fire right now. The hazing scandal has rocked the program as far as we know. Interim head coach, you're playing opening day at home on a Sunday, national television. Right. You have to win that game. Can Kirk Shiraka unlock the offense with Gavin Wimsatt at quarterback? Can the run game sustain itself? Sam Brown, I know, was a stout freshman last year till his injury. Can he be the next, Ray Rice type? He actually wears number 27, by the way. So can he be that type of running back for them? But I'm looking at the schedule. If you want to talk about a bowl game, and I know that Rutgers did make a bowl game already in the second stint of Schiano, the Gator Bowl the other year, again, by luck of COVID, if you want to call it luck, replacing Texas A&M and playing Wake Forest down in Jacksonville. That early schedule, Rich, you got Northwestern at home, get a Big Ten win. You have Temple at home, and then you have Virginia Tech at home. 3-0 starts, not out of the realm of possibility. Right. But then you play the Michigans. But then they have Wagner. This team could very well and probably should be 4-1 after 5 games. Now, where do you find 2 wins?
Yeah.
The Indianas of the world, and then you have to knock somebody else off. A Maryland, maybe a Michigan State, because I certainly could say right now they're not knocking off Ohio State, not knocking off Penn State, and they're probably not knocking off Iowa on the road at Kinnick Stadium late in the year as well. So is the path there? Yes, but it starts on next Sunday, Labor Day weekend, and Kirk Schrock, I think, is the biggest key this year from that staff, and see if Rutgers can get back to the postseason.
All of a sudden that Mickey Mouse emblem turned into an R real fast.
I mean, realistically, this team's going to win 4 games. If I had to throw it out there, I think they're going to win 4 games.
That's fair.
I would say 4 games. Maybe I'll give them 5. Because they'll probably I think they could be Indiana. They probably should be Indiana. So I would say maximum, I'm going to give them 5 wins. Go 5-7. So they'll improve upon last year. But the 4 wins are going to come early. Probably, if they win 5 games, Rich, they'll be 4-1 after the first 5. They'll knock off Indiana. And then if you're a Rutgers fan, you better pray that they can beat Maryland or Michigan State, or maybe upset Iowa on the road. Because they're not going to beat one of the big 3, which is Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State.
All right. Everyone give Nick a follow on Twitter at Nick Kosko 59 College Sports for On3 Sports, voice of RU Wrestling, Cal Athletics, Cal Live Sports as well. And by the way, congratulations. The young man decided I got to dip my toe into being a man. I mean, that's what it's all about in life, right? There's moments. And this guy turns around. He's off the market. He's engaged. He's ready. He's got the dog all moved in. He's got the talented, good-looking fiance that's going to keep him on the straight and narrow. That is called growing up.
That it is, and she definitely will. So, and that's right. I've not talked to you in an on-air capacity in well over a month now. So it's we can officially say it on the air now.
I was going to say, because you're running around, you're doing what you need to do. It's so funny for everyone watching. When you you told me, you're like, I'm getting close, and all I kept saying to you was, what did I keep texting you and telling you when you said you were getting ready to go get a ring?
Oh man, you're gonna have to remind me now.
6 months.
Yeah, that's right. 6 months. 6 months.
That's the rule of thumb. 6 months salary. Poor guy's working doubles and extras.
I got another game tomorrow. I gotta make up for it. So,
who are you calling tomorrow? Who's playing tomorrow?
As of now of this recording, I did Hamilton St. John Vienna yesterday, which was Friday the 25th, the Battle of the Beach on, of course, Cable Atlantic Live on our YouTube channel. That's our YouTube channel. Of course, follow us on Twitter at Cal Live Sports as well. Follow me on Twitter at Nick Kosko 59. Did Hamilton St. John Vienna last night, or yesterday afternoon, I should say, and then tomorrow, Sunday the 27th. I'll be doing Timber Creek and Highland. Little Connor Leary, by the way, playing over for Highland Regional under, of course, head coach Brian Leary. And, of course, Connor Leary, the youngest of the Leary brothers. We were talking about Devin Leary, of course, now playing for Kentucky. So Connor Leary dialing it up at quarterback for Highland tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. So catch us on the YouTube channel on Cable Atlantic Live.
Perfect. Look forward to that as well. I'll be nestling and doing some prep work. So I'll have you guys tuned in as I did yesterday with the game as well. So excellent job, my friend. Always appreciate a couple moments of jumping on this edition of BYP. We got a lot of college football. We'll get into the pros when the season starts as well with our weekly spots as always, but always appreciate a couple moments of your time, pal.
Appreciate it as always, Rich. Football's back.
Yes, it is. All right. We'll talk next week, pal.